Police and Crime Commissioner, PCCs actually hold the Chief Constable to account, and when a vacancy arises, you select the Chief Constable. Now, the current Chief Constable is a chief that Trevor Rodenhurst, you selected, I think of the order of a year to 18 months ago, something of that of that order. And I know
she started in January 2023.
Okay, so just over a year ago, and I know that you have regular meetings with him. I know that you make a point of making you accessible to officers, staff, volunteers across Bedfordshire. How do you take care to stick to your role as Police and Crime Commissioner and not because there are blurred lines between the role of the PCC and the Chief Constable. How do you go about making sure that you're not doing Trevor's job?
Very, very easy. Different police and crime commissioners operate in different ways. And I'm very fortunate that I have a chief constable that between him and I, one of the things that we agreed from the word go was that there was not going to be any secrets or surprises between us. And the thing is that the relationship between a chief constable and a police and crime commissioner is probably the most important relationship in any police force. If that relationship breaks down, it will filter through the entire force, and it could play out in the public. And unfortunately, we've seen this happen with some previous iterations of PCCs and chiefs in other forces many years ago when the role first became a thing, where you were having public spats between chiefs and PCs, ended up in court and tribunals. That is gradually now becoming a thing of the past. And in Bedfordshire, we've not had that issues, and long may that continue. So for me, it's quite easy. I know that the chief constable is the boss of the officers and staff. I do not tell them what to do. I do not give them operational directions. The chief, however, he answers to me. I hold him accountable. Of course, the PCC holds the employment contract effectively of the chief constables. The PCCs hold the budget, hold the finances. So there has to be a marrying of the two, all right? But the chief constable actually sees me as an extra pair of eyes for him, and I see him as an extra pair of eyes for me as well. So I think it is a very healthy thing that a PCC actually knows what the hell is going on in the organization. I trust the chief constable. However, I need to have as wide and as panoramic a view of what's happening in Bedfordshire Police for myself, because I have the responsibility of delivering in statute an efficient and an effective police force and police service to residents. And so long as I'm not crossing the line of operational deployment and things like that, I got to do whatever I believe is necessary to be able to have that efficiency and effectiveness. And part of that for me is to have direct engagement with the officers and staff members. And I pick up information that even the chief doesn't always know about sometimes. And I think the frontline officers appreciate that. The chief appreciates that. But the chief lastly knows that I will never, ever do anything to undermine him in front of his officer or even behind them with his officers or staff members. And if any issues come my way, I'm going to say, well, chief, you get paid big bucks. Sort that out. Get back to me. Let me know what you're doing about it. It's quite simple, really.
You do, of course, though, have responsibility for your staff within the office of the Police and Crime Commissioner.
Correct.
And
yes.
the Bedfordshire OPCC is one of the smallest in the country in terms of the number of staff. Now, Bedfordshire is not a big force, so perhaps that might be expected. But you do seem to achieve quite a lot given the small resources that you and your staff have available to you. Do you ever get tempted to take more people on within your staff so that you could do even more?
Well, we had to increase the numbers in my first year because I was seeing that the effectiveness of the office was being massively undermined, and there were a lot of statutory things that needed to be happening that were not happening, and people were effectively double jobbing or treble jobbing in some cases, while the workload and responsibility from the Home Office and the MOJ was growing. All right, so we needed to get people in to be able to take on those increasing role. However, the percentage of the entire police budget, which my office takes up, has remained the same for the last 2 years. And this budget that I've just got through the Police and Crime Panel a couple of months ago, again, is a standstill budget. So there will be no growth in my office. So apart from what happened in my very first year as Police and Crime Commissioner, and what I think some people don't also understand more locally in Bedfordshire as well, mostly the councillors who get quite political and quite pedantic sometimes, is that their naivety kind of shows up because they say, well, if we just scrap the Police and Crime Commissioner's office and the Police and Crime Commissioner role, we will have X amount more police officers on the beat. And what they failed to understand is that before PCCs were created, there was a police authority, which was largely made up of councillors, all of whom were on allowances. I think about 17 councillors had to be on there. Now imagine the chief constable trying to get a decision made about something quite urgent that required the buy-in of 17 councillors of political parties and the fighting that goes on between them. I'm yet to meet a single chief constable who thinks that having a group of councillors like they used to have all those years ago would be the way forward. So, and obviously, I mean, in fact, what we actually found in Bedfordshire was that the old police authority cost the same as a percentage of the police budget back then as my office is at the moment. So there was really no savings as such. But yeah, I mean, within my office, we're punching well above our weight. We still have the same responsibilities as any other police and crime commissioner has in the country. We have the same roles. So I'm really what we're achieving, yes.
Police and crime commissioners, OPCCs, seem to be here to stay, certainly for the foreseeable future. You're standing, you've declared, or rather, you've announced that you will be standing.
Yes.
The nominations are not yet open nor shut. They will be very soon. We're recording this reasonably ahead of the PCC elections, which take place in May of this year. What's your ambition if the people of Bedfordshire re-elected you as Bedfordshire PCC? What would you hope to do and to achieve in the 4 years that would follow that election?
Well, thank you for clarifying that I will have 4 years rather than 3 years. And what many people don't actually appreciate that I've only been in the role for 3 years in what should have been a 4-year term. My predecessor had 5 years because we lost 1 year because of COVID, and she gained 1 year because of COVID. So my strategy all along for my first term was to just get more police officers in. You cannot deal with ASB, child protection, domestic abuse, rape, burglaries, robberies, shoplifting, and community policing, of course, unless you've got the police officers to do that job. And given where we were in 2021 when I got elected, we just did not have that level of resources to be able to meet much of the demand that we had then in Bedfordshire. So my focus had to be on recruiting more police officers, which we have delivered. Then the next stage was retaining more of those officers because there's no point in pouring water to a sieve. Well, you're going to lose all the water anyway. And it was very expensive. So finding a way to retain more of those officers was the second key priority. We're now in a situation where we've got a record number of police officers. Retention in Bedfordshire Police is now going up, whereas nationally retention is going down. So we're in a very, very good place. if I did get re-elected, one of my key areas of focus would be to make sure that the record investment that we've made in neighborhood policing as a proportion of our entire budget, which I think is above average nationally, if not nearer the top, remains the same, does not get diminished in any way, shape, or form. I want to make sure that we're doing a lot more when it comes to roads policing. And I also want to make sure that we are doing a lot better now at solving crimes. I won't be able to accept the argument anymore that we just don't have enough resources, even though we're still very short of where we should be because of the funding formula. And we can talk about that if you want to. We do have more resources now than we had 3 years ago. And many more of those officers now are coming out of their probationary period. And we're keeping more of them. And we're also keeping more of our experienced officers so that retirement in Bedfordshire is one of the lowest in the country now. So we've made an amazing amount of progress over less than 3 years of me being enrolled. Now we need to start seeing crime solve rates improving. So part of my task into the Chief Constable, if I'm re-elected, will be, now you've got more officers, even though, yes, we still need more. Number one, what are you going to do to be solving more crimes in Bedfordshire and making our area safer? And of course, we're going to continue our crackdown on organized criminal gangs and investing heavily in technology as well.
Festus, you mentioned the funding formula. We would need probably an hour, maybe a day, maybe even a week to even begin to scratch the surface on the funding formula. What I would ask is that if Bedfordshire citizens do re-elect you, can we pick up again on the funding formula once you've been, if and when you have been returned to the office of Bedfordshire Police and Crime Commissioner?
Sorry, go on.
It is a huge topic, and I as a former resident of Bedfordshire, as I mentioned right at the outset, I am very familiar with the arguments that suggest that Bedfordshire is not well looked after by the current way in which funds are distributed between forces in England and Wales. But we'll park that for the moment. We've covered a lot of ground, and I really just want, in closing, to personally wish you well in your election campaign coming up. There are very personal reasons for my wishing you well, as well as public reasons that relate to the work that you've done as Bedfordshire Police and Crime Commissioner. But for the time being, Festus Akinbusoye, Bedfordshire Police and Crime Commissioner, thank you so much for your time.